We parent from this place of being terrified that we're going to mess up, that people are judging us because of our kids, that we have a certain vision or expectation of what our kid in our relationship is supposed to look like. And when it's not that, we feel like we're failing, we got to control it and fix it. And so when we see a behavior, it's very easy for us to just zoom into the far future and say, if they're like this now, they're going to be like this forever. Right. And I don't know about you, but I'm not the same person I was at 13.
Hey there, and welcome to the Parenting Reframe. I'm Albiona Rakipi, mom, parenting coach, life coach, and someone who has spent over 20 years helping families navigate the wild, wonderful world of raising kids. But here's the thing. This podcast goes deeper. It's not just about parenting tips, it's about personal transformation, because parenting our kids also means learning how to parent ourselves. From fear to creativity, from disconnection to deep connection, this is where growth gets real. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another incredible episode. You guys are really going to love this. So I am calling parents of preteens and teens, buckle up. This is an incredible episode. I am hosting this interview with Dr. Caswell, and she is an expert in preteen and teen behavior, social and emotional needs, and she is also a parenting coach who really works specifically with this age group. I knew I had to have her on. I knew you guys would benefit from all of her wisdom. We talk a lot about this idea of how do you set boundaries with teens? What do you do when it just feels like they don't care? How do we continue to connect in an age range where it just feels like everything they're interested in is everything but us, the parents? How do we still foster autonomy while still setting boundaries in a safe way? Dr. Cam offered so many reframes on some of our biggest questions, and it really left me just in awe of all of the information she shared. You guys are going to really love this one, so grab a notebook, grab your pen. You're going to want to take notes. She has a lot of great resources, a lot of great tips, and things that will completely transform the way you're parenting and connecting with your preteen and teen. Without further ado, here is Dr. Cam Caswell. Welcome, Dr. Cam. I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. When I was looking at some of your work and all the things that you do, I felt like it just aligned so deeply with my part of the audience of preteens and teens, because I was saying this recently, actually, while I was speaking on another podcast. I said, I feel like there is this lost, these years where there is a lot of misinformation, a lot of sort of myths about those preteen and teen years. And I do think parents are a little bit on their own, kind of looking for a life preserver and unsure of where to find it. I feel like when we're looking at more early childhood, school age years, there are a lot of great resources. There's a lot of things available to us. And then when you start to go into these uncharted waters, which I feel like is such a beautiful part of parenting, the volume of resources is not quite the same. So one, thank you for being here, because I know you're going to shed so much light on a lot of these topics. I mean, before we even jump in, and I told you I have all these notes on all the things I want to ask you. Could you just give us a little bit of a background on who you are and how you came to do the incredible work that you're doing?
Thank you for having me. I love having this conversation. I love what you do. So I'm so excited to be able to talk to your community as well. I am a mom of a teenager. Well, actually, she just turned 20. So I've made it kind of through. I mean, adolescents last longer, but I have made it through a lot of that. And it's interesting because I do everything that I teach, and my daughter's amazing. I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I think other people have told me that too. And we have a great relationship. So one of the things that really got me doing this is I love psychology, but when I was getting my PhD, I taught an adolescent psychology class at the college. And I had a lot of parents in the class because I taught an evening class, and they kept coming up to me going, oh my gosh, what we're learning in here is changing everything. Like, we never understood our teens before. And now that we do, it's actually changing my relationship. Why haven't we ever been told this? And we're still never told this. And so that kind of stuck a bug in my head, and it just kept escalating and escalating until finally I was like, this is where I'm landing. This is amazing. And I was helping all these people in my life. And I'm like, people need to know this, because it's so hard when we don't. And not that it's easy when we do, but man, it's so much easier.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Well, I love that, you have so much knowledge and so much expertise in this area, specifically when we're looking at preteens and teens. And I think I guess I would love to kind of start here because this is I had made this video not that long ago on, I don't know which social media platform, and it got a lot of engagement. And I don't think I said anything earth shattering, and I don't think you'll think it's earth shattering either. But it's one of those moments where I do think, to your point about teaching this class and having parents go, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of it that way. And I think those are sort of the moments where we, as whether you're coaching, whether you're working with a family in a therapeutic setting, there is something about this idea of like just simplifying it so that you can almost remember what you already know becomes really imperative in that process. But the point I made in this video was that what happens is as our kids get older and we start to enter these preteen and teen years, our expectations go up because the belief is that they're old enough to know better. And so once we subscribe to that idea that they're old enough to know better, the minute something doesn't align with that story, our patience goes down. So there's this very distinct relationship between expectations going up, patience going down. And so as a result, we're never really meeting our preteens and teens with the same level of compassion and understanding that we were when they were younger. So can we start there with like some of the myths or some of the things that you feel like, back to the idea of this class that you taught, what are some major themes that you feel like you're kind of debunking pretty quickly or helping parents see in a new way?
So I love this question, and this is really foundational to what I do because we go into the teen years with these stereotypes, right? They're disrespectful, they're entitled, they're going to be difficult, they're lazy, they don't talk to their parents, they shut us out, they're secretive. And we have all these beliefs about who our teens are. And we go into the teen years already reacting to their behaviors like that is the intention. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because we're treating them like that, they become that way out of a defense. And so a lot of the behaviors that we're reading as that is really the feelings they're creating in us because of those beliefs, not because of what their intention is. And so when we step back and we go, what's really going on here? Because our kids, we do have this belief they should know, and we need to correct this because this is the time they are learning all of these skills that we get frustrated with: time management, organization, cleanliness, prioritization, critical thinking, all of these things that we keep punishing them for. They're actually in the process, just beginning of the process of actually learning these skills. And when we punish them for them, we're not teaching them the skills. We're shaming them for not already having them. That's hard for a kid to grow up with, saying you're broken because you haven't developed skills. Don't even have the brain connections to do yet.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And I think that's so beautifully explained, the way you just stated that. And all the things that you said are things that I listen to as I'm working with families. They're disrespectful. They're just entitled. They're never grateful. They're right. All the things they don't care. They shut us out. They think they know everything. Like those are just so many of the ways that we describe teens. And I think teens get such a bad rap. And I've said this before that I don't know how you feel, but my daughter will be turning 20 next month. And I really think the teen years for me were really special. They felt really, I loved them. I felt like they held up the biggest mirror to myself. I was really well versed in the early childhood space, and I kind of really understood sort of from a developmental standpoint what was happening along the way with her and my son. And then as we entered those teen years, I felt a little bit unsteady. I was a little bit like, oh, wait a second. And then even though, I had obviously some knowledge and some understanding of development, it's still very different when it's the parent-child dynamic.
You can't deny the emotions.
Exactly. And I just think that, one of the things that comes up a lot, and I know you've spoken on this both on your social media and on your podcast, but can we unpack a little bit of like when a parent determines that the behavior is disrespectful? Where do we start? Where do we guide this parent who believes that they just have a disrespectful child? And this is what I mean about teens getting a bad rap. If we're describing younger children, we would separate the behavior from the child. So we would say something like, oh man, my kid's really struggling with transitions, or my child has a really hard time at bedtime, right? When we move into teen years, we get very quick to say things like, I have an entitled kid. And we give these very quick adjective descriptors almost as their identity. So can we start with like the disrespect? Because that's got to be the biggest one I hear.
Yeah. And I want to step back too, because I think the main thing that happens, what's happening here is I see a lot of fear in parenting. We parent from this place of being terrified that we're going to mess up, that people are judging us because of our kids, that we have a certain vision or expectation of what our kid in our relationship is supposed to look like. And when it's not that, we feel like we're failing, we got to control it and fix it. And so we already have that. And so when we see a behavior, it's very easy for us to just zoom into the far future and say, if they're like this now, they're going to be like this forever. Right. And I don't know about you, but I'm not the same person I was at 13. Like there's things that I prioritized then that I don't prioritize now. Right. So that, first of all, we need to refrain and go, this is a moment right now. This is a time right now where we're struggling with them learning to voice their opinion in a way that feels respectful. That's it. And disrespect is typically dysregulation. It is a tone that comes out as a reflex to feeling unheard, controlled, criticized, any of those things. So is the eye roll. Parents do it too. We do it all the time. And it's interesting because when we do it, it's you're pushing my buttons. When they do it, it's you're disrespecting me. And the teen never wins and the parents always do. And so we've got double standards here that we need to step back and look at, because when you are feeling disrespected by somebody, how do you respond as an adult? You tend to get a little defensive. You tend to get snarky. You protect yourself. That's what our teens are doing.
Yeah.
We just want to teach them, how do you communicate in a way that comes across as more respectful, because you'll be heard more when you're more respectful. Adults haven't learned how to do that either. Let's be real. And when we can't regulate ourselves, and I work with this with a lot of my parents that I work with. I have a group of parents I work with, and they've come to the realization that they're unable to regulate themselves. They've learned, I don't know how to regulate myself. That's where I need to start, because I'm sitting here yelling at my kid to get them to regulate themselves. And it's like the worst thing you could possibly do to help a kid regulate themselves. So when we stop and we take a breath and we go, this is not an attack on me. This is them learning to voice what they need to voice, which, yay, that they're doing that. This is great. I want my child to have an opinion. I want my child to disagree with me and think for themselves. That's fantastic. Now, let's learn how to do it in a way that feels respectful both ways. And we do that mainly by modeling it back to them. And when we get snarky back, or we yell back, or we shut down, we're just showing them disrespect right back. And that's what we're teaching. And it's hard. You're right. The mirror thing, whoo, there's a lot of stuff that I noticed about myself that you do. And that self-reflection can be really uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I teach a 4-step process to parents, and it helps with their own regulation, but really it's about shifting from reactive patterning to more thoughtful responses. And I call it PAR, but it just stands for pause, acknowledge, respond, reflect. And that last R was added on because I recognized that it was more than just pausing, more than just acknowledging without judgment. Like, oof, when they roll their eyes, I am like, I want to hit the roof. Like, I am really just acknowledging what it does to us inside. And then responding, if we can just pause and acknowledge, like that's a lot, you'll naturally shift into a response that's going to be more connective. But the reflecting is so important, because what we really want to think about is, let's unpack, why do you see red when you see your child roll their eyes? Why are you so ignited? Why? Right? And like really sitting with that.
It is, I think, is a huge piece of it, because, and I know that people even talking about their kids being disrespectful get so heated and upset. And I will sit there in a session with parents and their child will get very dysregulated, and the parents will be like, see what I mean? Look how disrespectful. And I'm like, I do not see I don't feel disrespected. I don't see disrespect. I see a kid that's very frustrated and very shut down right now. That's all I see. What you're feeling is definitely disrespect. And I understand why you're feeling that way, but that is not the intention behind this behavior. And that we have to be very understanding about why this triggers us. And why it does is actually pretty clear. I mean, we have a lot of narratives about how children are supposed to be respectful to adults. You as a parent are entitled to your child's respect and trust and everything. And you know what? I'm sorry, we're not.
Mm-hmm.
We just aren't. I don't want to raise a child that blindly just obeys and respects an adult because they're an adult. Because, I mean, come on, let's look at the news today. There's a lot that is not a place I want my kid to question, but she can question respectfully. That's what I want to teach her. So I think that is what we need to separate, is not, am I upset that they're disagreeing with me? Am I upset by the tone? Or am I curious and going, okay, let me hear what my child's trying to say. Let me help my child learn to connect the dots and build that critical thinking, and just let them know the way it's coming out doesn't resonate well with me, just to let you know. And I'll tell my daughter, I go, you know what? I hear you, but if you continue going the way you are, I'm just going to say up front, it's not going to end well. It's making me feel some kind of way. So we can either change it up or we can wait later. That's all. She's extraordinarily respectful. Does she talk to me in a way that sounds disrespectful? Absolutely. When she's dysregulated, 100%.
I love that. So with that, because I'm hearing the voices of the parents who are listening to this and going, yeah, but what about, and so what do we say when they are being disrespectful? The tone is now a tone that we don't appreciate, or it's not the tone that we want to teach them to use when they're trying to express an opinion or a disagreement in a healthy way. Beyond modeling, the question that comes up often is sort of, how do we set boundaries with teens without it turning into this humongous battle? Like, how do we just confidently say, I can't continue the conversation until you are able to get yourself calm? Like, how do we do that?
You just did it. And I think what we mistake boundaries for, we think boundaries are things that we tell other people they have to do with us. We do not have the power to tell even our kids what to do or how to do it. They can still do it, even if we say. Our only control we have is to respect our own boundaries. So when my teen talks to me in a way that doesn't feel good, I can't say, you can't talk to me that way, because you know what? She just did. So yes, she can. That's just silly, right? And then they're going to go, you can't control me, so let me show you that I can. And now we're in a power struggle. Instead of going, this clearly matters to you. I'm going to read the emotion behind this. This is big emotion, right? It's not intentional disrespect. It's big. This matters. This matters a lot. I want to hear you. I cannot listen when I'm feeling attacked, and that's how I feel right now. So I'm either going to walk away and we can do this later, or can we reset now? Now, my teen doesn't have to change a thing. My teen can continue speaking that way, but you know what changes? They can't continue speaking to me, or they cannot get a response from me if they continue doing that. And they learn over time, hey, if I want to be heard, I need to talk in a certain way. That's it. Instead of, I'm not of value, I don't have enough value to be heard. And that's what we do when we shut them down, because we don't like their tone. They don't hear speak in a more respectful way. That we hear, you don't have a right to speak.
What a beautiful reframe on boundary setting. I love that so much. I'm going to put it in my pocket. Thank you, Dr. Cam. That's such a good one. Because I think the idea that boundaries means I get to do something to you, or I get to set a boundary to change the way you're behaving, is actually so incorrect, especially in the teen years and the preteen years. And the idea that we can say, well, what's my boundary? Right. How do I, back to your point of modeling, what a beautiful thing. I remember, and you probably feel this too, I feel it deeply as a mother of a daughter. I mean, I have a son too, but as a mother of a daughter, I do want her to see what it is to watch a woman set boundaries and hold them.
And advocate for themselves.
Yes, exactly.
And I see this in my teenager, and she's able to do things and say things that I still struggle to do and say, because it wasn't something that we were taught growing up. And that's not a fault of our parents. It was just not something kids were taught, because that was not something we even considered. And now it's about how do we give them the skills and how do we give them the confidence to feel like I have value, even as a kid, to still set boundaries. Yeah, they should be able to set boundaries. That's safety.
I love that. So what a great reframe. What a great way to be able to look at it. And also so empowering for you, the parent, because you can decide, I can decide now how I want to proceed. So there is one of the questions I get often when I say to just, if you don't like their tone or if they're saying things that feel hurtful or it's going into that territory where it's not going to end well, as you said earlier. And this is true, by the way, for all relationships, whether it's you and your child or you and another adult. When you see it going off course, you would stop. You would stop. If you and a friend were arguing and you could see now the dysregulation is happening, we're starting to say things, we're starting to feel reactive. One of you needs to anchor and say, I already see where this is going and it's not going to be productive or healthy. Let's pause. Let's stop. We need a break.
I think this is where we get the idea of authority very mixed up, because I think parents see authority as I'm right, you are wrong, I get my way, you do not get your way. And that is not authority. That is power and control. And that is entitlement, flat out. Authority is saying, I am the grown-up here. I'm the one that if there's escalation, I'm the one that needs to de-escalate. If there's miscommunication here, I'm the one that is responsible for trying to figure out and stop and listen to you. Authority means I have the responsibility here, not the right. And I think we confuse that considerably. And when we actually use our authority in that way, in the responsibility way, guess what we get back in return? Respect, trust, connection, communication, all of the things we want. And we don't even have to ask for it because we've earned it. We've showed it to them. And when we show it to them, man, they are ready to give it to us in spades.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And that is, I mean, I'm applauding and cheering you everything that you're saying on, because it's so true. And I love this redefinition or redefining way of looking at authority, because, the way we were parented, it is true, right? Like there was so much emphasis on respect and disrespect, and you will not be disrespectful. And our value really was attached to this idea of being approved of, not disappointing anyone, laying low, not ruffling feathers. And so it's very understandable for a parent's sort of trigger, their reactive place to be there, because it was so unsafe for us as kids to be able to voice disagreement or to express an emotion that maybe was impermissible, like anger or sadness or whatever it might be. So I think a lot of the work is really in like, how do we parent ourselves through it? Because as I said to you earlier, like these are the years that really teach us the most about ourselves, if we can allow it to, rather than taking on the approach of like, well, if I control everything they do, then I will feel better. And so let's talk a little bit about control and connection. I always have a little bit of issue with this, and I'll explain why in a minute, but I'd love to hear your sort of thoughts around, okay, well, how do we build connection in the teen years when our kids, their interests change? We're not as cool as we were when we were 6, to them when we were 6 years old. So how do we maintain or try to still attempt connection in a moment where it feels like we're just being pushed away? Our kids are desperately trying to figure out who they are, in the absence of being our child, right?
We need to start with a mindset shift. And the first thing that I will tell parents is it's okay to mourn the loss of your little kid, because they're gone. And that doesn't mean they didn't exist. But when we hold on tightly to that little kid and go, I want you to be like that again. I want that connection. I want you used to do this. What happened to you? Where did you go? That is such a crushing thing to tell our kids, saying, I don't like you now.
Yeah.
And I get it. It's okay to mourn the loss of that little kid. We love that little kid. The little kid that followed you around and hugged you and mom. We love that little kid. And that's wonderful. But now our job is to love the person that we're raising now to love this person. And it's hard to love this person when they're not as cozy and comfortable and everything else. But I first want to step back too and say, our teens are not responsible for our feelings and emotions. Their job is to make us okay and comfortable. That they have too much to do on their own. They cannot be responsible for that, right? Their job now is to build their own identity, to create autonomy, to separate themselves from us. That is their job. And so when we cling on to them and we guilt them for that and we shame them for that, we're holding them back from the very thing that we're supposed to be supporting them to do. So we need to step and take the personal part out of it. This is not a rejection of us. It is moving towards something that they need to move towards too. Believe me, when we give them that space and we are there and we support them, we don't ignore them, we don't step back, we're just step to the side. We step next to them, right? And we cheer them on from the sidelines. And when we do that, guess what? They are going to come right back. When they feel safe and they feel like they are successfully set as a separate human being, they will come back.
Yes.
And that is the best thing in the world, because now you have this new person in your life that is an amazing person that you never had. Like, my daughter now is one of my best friends. Am I still the mom? Yes. But that doesn't mean I win all the time. And that doesn't mean I don't tell her what to do. She's 20.
Yeah.
That's her job to figure out what to do. But does she come to me and ask for advice? Yes.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I know. I couldn't agree more. I think we're in the same boat when it comes to having a little bit of that rear view perspective, right? So my son's 22, my daughter will be 20. And I had Kirk Martin on the podcast a little while ago,
Kirk.
and he's
a good friend of mine.
Yeah. And he's talking about, his son and, raising a strong-willed son who's now an adult. And we both sort of laughed and had a chuckle at this idea that when you have a child now who is an adult, right? And when they want to spend time with you, there is nothing more rewarding than knowing that they have the choice to do whatever they want with their time, and you're still their person. You're still the one they come to for advice. And so, to your point, it's like that mindset shift is so important, because then we shift from I'm the disciplinarian, I'm the parent, I'm the one in charge, to, I get to be the witness and
The guide.
I get to
That's
cheer, right? I get to be the guide. I get to cheer you on.
Yeah.
I get to celebrate your ups and downs. I get to be there to hold space with you. I get to be there to understand the things that interest you that I might not even understand, but I'm going to try, right? Like, I think we have such a resistance to sort of everything teens do as being like, who knows? They love their phones, or they love electronics, or they love whatever. And it's like, no, but they're interested in things. What do they love watching on their electronics?
I think that's another thing I struggle with, is that we have such this negative fighting the enemy of technology, and every generation always has. And every generation says, but this is way worse. And this generation is now going, but this is way worse. But I'm going to guarantee you, our kids are going to have something with their kids that is even worse.
Thank you.
There's always going to be something big and scary. And when we treat it as the enemy and we fight them against it, we're not helping them, because that is going to be their life. So we're just preventing them from learning how to use these tools and learn how to be in the world that's going to be their world in an effective, healthy, balanced way. And so I talk to kids who are on their phones a lot. And what do they do on them? They connect with their friends. They learn about stuff that they love. They laugh and find stuff. We see a lot of these trends of there's all these negative trends. Yes, there is. And how our kids interact with that depends on how educated they are, which is part of our guiding.
Yes.
But a lot of them find, we look at trends like, oh my gosh, everyone's thin and fighting. But I see a lot of body positivity, things I've never seen anywhere in the world when I was growing up. We did not have that.
Yes.
So there's so many more opportunities to find your people and find the things that you love and connect with people that get you, rather than trying to shape yourself for the people that are around you to get. And I think that is so incredibly cool and important. I think parents need to embrace it, not saying, oh, I'm not going to care, but teaching them boundaries, not based off of restriction, but boundaries based off of a healthy balance of life.
Yeah, that's so important too. And I can tell you and I agree with everything you're saying. I think back to the point you made earlier about we really always parent, like there's so much fear in the way that we parent, right? And electronics is just no different. So when we're looking at social media, our phone usage, screen time, all of that, there's just so much noise in this space that it's so fear inducing for a lot of parents. And I didn't have a lot of restrictions around it, but I did have, like, to your point, I was like, well, what's the aim? Like, I don't want to demonize these things. I mean, it's the way of the world right now. And I want to show them this healthy balance. And I also figure maybe my job is to bring value to other things that are not the phone so that there is interest and still engaging instead of making it this terrible thing. Get off of it. It's this, all the things that we're kind of taught to do. And I can tell you now, and I bet I would be curious to know how your daughter feels, but I think our kids' generation is going to have better habits with their phones than our generation.
My daughter has better habits than I do, for sure.
Yes, my kids will take apps off their phone. They turn all notifications off. My son played college soccer. He didn't even have any apps on his phone in season. Like, they have and I never explicitly taught that, neither did my husband. So I think, to your point, sometimes we just think we have to be the solution providers and we have to tell them exactly how to balance it instead of letting them find their way, letting them kind of ebb and flow and go, like, my daughter said one time, I was on Instagram for like too long one day and I noticed how it felt. And it was just like, I felt drained all day and there was too much chatter in my head and I was starting to like overthink things. So I just decided I'm taking a break from it and I felt way better. And now I'm just doing it and I'm like, oh, like that was all her own process.
But if you had forced her to do that, she would have fought tooth and nail. And because now you're making it this power struggle, which no, she's not going to want to lose. And the more we restrict it, the more obsessed they become with it because it becomes this forbidden fruit, this like, oh my gosh, I can't have this. And this is so when we don't make a big deal out of it, it's not a big deal. It's part of life. We're going to find balance. Yeah. We're going to make sure we've got time to do stuff, not by you can't, I have parents that blame everything on the phone. And nothing is actually to do with the phone because kids often turn to the phone to escape the world. They're not going to it, and that's causing them to distance themselves from the world. And I find it interesting too, because when my client list and the amount of appointments I get skyrockets the second school starts when they're on their phones less, but in school and have more home pressure. And it drops almost to nothing in the summertime when there's no school pressure or pressure from their parents, but they're on their phone more. But yet we don't say we need to change those things, even though those things, without a doubt across the board, are what's causing far more mental health issues than the phone. So I think that to me is baffling.
I completely agree with you. I had Dr. Will Dobot on. I don't know if you know him, but he wrote a book called Kids These Days. And we had this exact conversation. He works with at-risk teens and he takes them into the woods or wilderness for 3-week excursions right when they're at the point of some type of really sort of detrimental consequence, whether it's a juvenile assisted living situation. And he says the minute we put them in these environments where they're with nature and they are connecting with their own resilience, their own power, they're trusted, we're connecting with them, we're giving them these like opportunities to really shine and to really, it is the transformation that takes place is unbelievable. And so to your point, and he said the same thing, we spend a lot of time worrying about the phones and social media when that's not really where we should be focused. It's not where we should be focused. And so,
because when we focus on these other things, they don't need to turn to their phone. Because most of them don't want to be spending time just scrolling. They don't know what else to do or it's the way to shut out the world. We want to stop them feeling like they have to shut out the world. That's what I want to focus on. And we just don't. We just take away the one thing that makes them feel okay right now.
Absolutely. I know I was talking with a family that I'm working with, and had this conversation, and I said, I never tracked my kids. I never put their location on, or I didn't. And they were like, oh my gosh, I can't, how? And I said, I don't know. I just saw a lot of parents around me and they would use tracking all the time. And they were constantly looking, they were constantly worried, double checking, triple checking every second, texting their kid nonstop. And I said to my kids, look, here's the deal. You guys are getting older. You're going to have a little more time and space to be independent and go places and make choices with me and your dad, not there. And here's what we need from you guys. The expectation is that you're accountable to letting us know where you are and who you're with and what you're doing and checking in. We're not going to check on it. We're not turning tracking on. We'll turn it on if we're really worried about something. But like in general, that's not the way we want to create this dynamic. We need you guys to be accountable to like knowing that like you have to let us know. So we're aware of where you are. And that alone built trust. They felt trusted. We didn't want to babysit their every move. And honestly, and I know this scares so many parents, but sometimes we have to let them make the bad decisions. Sometimes we have to let them make the mistake, and we can't be on top of it every second.
So this is the other thing that is frustrating to me, because we feel like as parents, our job is to prevent any mistakes, to prevent any bad decisions, to prevent, and that is such we're stealing so much life from our kids by doing that. So much life. And I was talking to a mom the other day, and she's like, my son wants to go to a concert with his friends, and I'm just afraid if he goes, he's going to make a bad decision. And I go, and what if he does? That will probably be one of the best stories he ever tells for the rest of his life. You want to take that from him because you're afraid. That's I get why, but it's so unfair to your kid that you're keeping your kid from living out of your own fear. And that breaks my heart. It does. It breaks my heart. And my daughter has done things where I sit there with a lump in my throat, and I'm like, oh my God. And again, she went to New York as a teenager by herself to check out a school, rode the bus, did all that. And we've gone to New York a lot. She knows her way better than I do. But nonetheless, I'm like, she came back literally so much more confident and mature just from that one trip because she did it. And when she was there and she got nervous, she called me immediately, and we just kind of talked it down, and she figured it out. I didn't solve it. We just sat there while she calmed down, and she figured it out. And yes, was I scared? Heck yeah. If something had happened to her, would I have forgiven myself? No. But it doesn't matter, because that's her life. Got to live her life. I'm not going to get in her way of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it made me think of a parent too that had a similar question one time for me. And she said, how do we ensure that, they understand the gravity of some of the choices that they could be making now with their phones and with their whatever? And I said, like you're asking the wrong question. Like the better question to ask yourself is, how do I create the space so that when they make that mistake, they'll come to me?
They feel safe. They feel safe. Yep.
Yeah. And so like when we approach it from the lens of like, how do I make sure they don't do A, B, or C? You're going to naturally instill a sense of fear in them. You're going to naturally make them feel like they never want to disappoint you. Yep. They're going to still make the bad choice because their brains are still developing. We know that. And what's going to happen then inevitably is what you just said. They will hide. They will keep it from you. They will continue to make one poor decision after the other. And you're going to be left going, oh my gosh, we could have had I just known at the beginning of this process, I could have helped you. But because that's been the space that's been created, and they're afraid now of disappointing you or getting in trouble, they're not going to come to you. So the better question, if you're sitting here listening to this saying, well, how do I make sure that they don't do this and don't do that? How do I make sure to create the space so that when they make mistakes, they will come to us or me? And then you will be able to rectify and learn and go through it together. As you said, your daughter was scared. You were scared. You were there, though. You were that phone call. You were the person and that's because you didn't scare her into going if you go on this trip, what are you thinking?
No, not at all. Yeah. But we did say when this happens, what do we planned ahead, not in a fear way, but just do you have a plan?
Sure.
But I think what the irony of it is, the more we try to protect our kids by controlling what they do, the less we're able to actually protect our kids.
Yes.
And that is hard for parents to wrap their head around. But the tighter we hold on, the more they push away. And so now we don't have that influence and that impact when we need it most. And so when we let go and we let them breathe, and when the thing is really, really important, guess what? They'll listen because they know this must be really, really important if mom is stepping in now. So I save it. I save it for when it really, really matters.
Yeah. So with that, how do you guide parents that come to you when there are safety concerns? Like, I just think, I'm noticing that there's a huge dip in their sort of disposition because I think might be some online bullying, or I think that they're spending too much time taking in content that's not healthy, or they've communicated with somebody that they shouldn't. Like, how do we set some safety boundaries or put those in place while still really supporting that sense of autonomy?
I think the hardest thing for parents is that we need to first create connection. We need to first build that bridge and strengthen that bridge. And parents are in such a sense of urgency that they're like, we don't have time to do that. But let me explain something. When we don't have that, there is nothing you can do that's going to force them to change. So the longer you control and try to force that change without building that connection, the more you're delaying actually helping them. And I think parents, that is a hard thing. So I always tell parents, stop talking about the thing you're fearing right now and start just talking about anything else. Just start understanding their world. Start listening to them. Start doing stuff for no other reason than just do it. Even sit with them and don't talk at all. If you keep bringing it up, you're not helping. They know. They already know. You've told them a million times. They probably know before you even told them. Connect with them. Build safety. Not in a way where I'm going to spend 5 days building safety so I can go tell them what to do. That's not it. It's I want to build a connection with them enough that as they're figuring this out, they're going to know they can lean on me and trust me when they want to work things through. My plan is never to go in and fix it because I can't. My goal is to say, I want to be that person that they turn to so I can have that influence and I can be there for them to lift them up when they're ready. That's all we can do. And this is hard for parents. I get it because you want to go in and fix it. But I think when parents, and I often flip this, I go, if you don't know how to respond to a teen, flip it and go, if you were in a situation like that, if you felt that emotion, if you were in that state of fear or pressure, what would help you? And never do they say what they would do with their teen. Never.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
what a great exercise.
That's the same thing that's going to help your teen because guess what? They're human too. And that's the human emotion needs. So stop and go, if I was spiraling out of control right now, what would actually help me?
That's a great, great exercise. Just what a crash course in empathy and compassion and getting you to understand like the true need of any situation. I think that's really important. So when you are, sort of guiding parents through this, you've probably felt this as well, but there are times where I'll say to a parent and they're kind of, maybe on that initial call, they're listing all the things that seem to not be working and all the things that are going wrong and all the battles and the places where they're all just kind of at a standstill. And I'll say like, when's the last time you guys just had fun? Like, I think they're waiting for me to come in with this really, okay, well, we need to put this kind of boundary around the phone. We have to have this kind of boundary. You need to be able to see who she's texting with. But instead I'll go sometimes like, when's the last time you just did something for fun with them or like watched a show for fun or went out and had ice cream or like did the same things you do with younger children, but just based it off of their interests. And they're like, like we haven't. And I'm like, well, let's bring some lightness into the home.
Right. There's this belief that connection is a reward for good behavior. That I'm not going to reward them if they're bad by connecting with them. Like I had a mom say, I had an appointment to go get a manicure with my daughter, but her grades are down and I don't want to reward her. And I'm like, how does a manicure have anything to do with the grades? In fact, she probably needs a manicure more than anything with you. Connection is the foundation for good behavior, not the reward for it. End of story.
Yes. Thank you for that. If everyone listening, if you heard nothing else, please, because Dr. Cam's has having so many good mic drop moments in this episode, but that is so perfectly stated. You are absolutely right. We often think connection is rewards. And the minute they're not doing something that we think they're supposed to be doing, we take away the quote unquote reward, which is the connection, which is completely backfiring and working against you. So I completely agree with you. It's like, and that's happened in so many, sessions that I've sat in too, where they're like, well, we were going to go out and do like a hike and grab a coffee, but then we just decided not. I just said no, because I didn't like how she was speaking to me. And I was like,
you just did
what?
You just made it worse when you could have made it so much better. Because that talk was her screaming, Mom, I need connection with you so bad. Yeah, I think that is the biggest thing is we're trying to control them that's what punishment is. Punishment is trying to control their behavior by saying, I'm going to make this hurt badly enough that hopefully you'll stop. And that's assuming ill intent. And it's not. It's they're doing their best they can. So I think we need to understand when kids are acting out, that's when they need us the most.
Yeah, absolutely. If we could just reframe it and see it that way, it would be such I was reading The Awakened Brain by Dr. Lisa Miller, and I haven't read her book on kids, which I want to get to next. But the reason I bring it up is because of something you said right now about this idea of like, well, she didn't get good grades, so we canceled the manicure appointment, right? Which would have been, which we know is like, oh, please don't do that. But she says a lot of times there's like achievement-based parenting, and I can't remember the counter to that, but it's something along what we're describing, which is like more connection. And she talks about this idea that like when your kids get in the car, regardless of age, after school, is our first question, how did you do on your test?
I know.
How did you behave today? Were you a good listener? Were you, all the things. And you're like, wow, like if you just saw it from the lens of your child, like I can't imagine walking in from my day-to-day work and my husband saying to me, did you kill it today in that meeting? Did you really deliver?
Did you deliver?
Were you good?
Right.
Were your clients happy with your work today? Like, can you imagine? And you're like, it's like your respite, your place where you're supposed to kind of have that soft landing of the end of the day or whatever it might be. And to just be met with like your number one person coming in with achievement-based questions. And I know we mean well. I have asked my kids these same questions, so I completely get it. But I made that shift with my kids because I realized like, it didn't matter. It's not really what I even wanted to know. I wanted to know how they felt. I wanted to know how did the day land today? What were the fun parts? What were the hard parts? So we started to change our conversations, and I started to say things like, hey, who did you lean on today and who leaned on you? I wanted them to just have an awareness of connectivity. And then I would say, and they would ask me the same thing. They'd go, oh, well, when I was at recess, I helped John because he couldn't tie his shoe. And then but then I needed help in math. So I went to so-and-so. And then they'll say, did you lean on someone today? And I'll go, actually, yeah, you wouldn't believe it. And then even teens, as they get older, like, how can we value them? How can we let them know they matter instead of looking at them with through this lens of like, you're just never going to listen. And I guess we'll just talk again when you're 18.
Yeah. Or you're ignoring me. And I think it's important too with the questions too. So when teens have just come home from school and their brain is drained, even asking how was your day is another demand, requesting more brain processing, and they just don't have it. And so I just go, it's so good to see you. I'm happy you're home. That's it. Lighten up. I'm happy you're home. I don't need anything from you. I'm just happy you're here. That's all I need. And so I'm not going to demand anything from them, even a question, even an answer. Because then when they're ready, they'll tell you. On their time. So I challenge parents, if nothing else, when their kid comes home from school, just say, I'm happy you're home.
And what a good feeling that is, right? To walk into your home with your people.
They probably haven't felt appreciated all day.
Exactly. And when we think of, I think, like I said, teens just get a bad rap. So if we think of even their school day as likely, heavily instruction based, right? A lot of adults telling them what to do all day long. They're so craving independence and social, interactions and things like that. And then they come home.
It's counter to every single thing they need in development, in this developmental phase. I'm just going to put that out there.
Exactly. Yes. No, it's completely true. And then they come home and then we're peppering them with, how is this? How is that? What did you do? What did you know?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, oh my gosh, if everyone would just like, if we all just took a collective sigh, just one big deep breath, I think we'd be able to solve a lot of problems without trying so hard. I think we make it, so much harder. So you and I, before we turned on the recording, I had said to you, like, sometimes we're just making it more complicated than what it needs to be. So what are some areas that you can kind of leave listeners with in terms of like where you just might be making it harder than it needs to be? Like, what are some things you see most often?
The first thing is the less you do for your teen, the more you let them learn to do for themselves. We need to stop micromanaging because we're not giving them the opportunity to build that skill. Are they going to do it the way we want it? No. Are they going to do it as efficiently as they could? No, because they're learning. So the less we do for their teens, the more we are actually giving them. So I want parents to remember that.
Can I ask you a follow-up to that? Because I know a parent listening will say, what do you do if it's full-blown refusal? I don't want to do it. I'm not doing it.
So you mean like a chore? Going,
Mm-hmm.
I want to understand why you're resistant to doing that. What's going on? Because when kids have an opportunity to feel in control, how do I give them back some control? Because when they're saying, I don't want to do it, the last thing we need to do is take away more control from them. Because that is them saying, I don't feel in control. So how do we step back? Because when kids own, and this is one thing I know with chores and things like that, when we create a positive experience around chores, we do them together. I thank them for doing it. I don't nag them about when they do it. I even allow my daughter to say no when she wants to, and she ends up saying yes more. But when the experience is more about, I get to contribute, this feels good, I'm appreciated, and not you are obligated to do this, because if you don't, that is a horrible feeling. So when we do that, our kids are resisting. They're learning to hate chores. They're learning that if I'm not around, I'm definitely not going to I'm not learning responsibility. I'm learning resistance and avoidance, right? When they feel good about it, when this is a great experience and they're like, Mom really appreciates me, even if it's not perfect. And Mom understands that I don't like doing this, and I'm helping and understanding what's resistant about it. All of a sudden, my daughter's doing chores without me even asking. Is she cleaning her room? No, because that's her room and she doesn't want to clean. She wants to leave it. She doesn't want to deal with stuff when she's in her room. That's fine. But helping around the house? Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I always tell parents too, like if you're in power struggle all day and you're sort of feeling like you're just one battle after the other, don't start with chores. Like, don't make that, or right? Like, it's like
let your kid actually win something.
Yes.
The power struggles stop when your kid feels like they can occasionally win.
Yes, exactly. And so I always say, like, you have bigger fish to fry. There's better things to be doing with your time together and I'm not saying to not eventually get to that, but it has to be done in the way that you're describing, not from a control-based framework, but from a connective, let's really help each other, from a contributing space, not from I'm the parent, you're going to do as you're told. This is what needs to be done, right? That's just going to backfire every time. So instead, like, and to your point, you're saying we have to stop micromanaging. I agree. And you're likely meaning tasks that have to do with them, like getting your backpack ready, getting your homework done, right? If you forget something, let the natural consequence play out. If they forgot something, don't go in there and fix it and save it every time. So, but I wanted to highlight the chores because I get that all the time. And I always say, like, oh gosh, you just have better things to be doing than arguing about whether they made their bed.
Well, here's thing I'm always fascinated by, because I'll ask parents, why is chores so important? Why is cleaning their room so important? And almost always the answer is, well, I don't want them to go and have a roommate one day that can't stand being with them. And I'm like, so you are prioritizing what your child needs right now. You're prioritizing some random person you don't even know's possible opinion about your teen and discomfort around them over what your teen actually needs from you right now. That's what you're doing. So that's confusing. We do need chores, but let's understand what chores are actually for. They're for teaching kids how to contribute. They are for teaching kids what it feels like and how to be responsible. We don't teach them that by micromanaging. That teaches the opposite again. That does not teach them responsibility or wanting to contribute. So when we think about what am I actually trying to teach and what am I actually teaching, they don't align. So we got to step back and understand that. And then when we approach it in a different way, we actually teach what we want to teach and not the absolute opposite, which we tend to do a lot, which is why raising teens becomes so hard because we're teaching the wrong thing.
Well, that's a whole conversation in and of itself. I know my husband and I used to have conversations that sounded like he would say something like, I'm teaching them. And I'm like, but we're lecturing them. And that's not the same thing. That's not teaching, right? And also like kids and preteens and teens and people in general, I'll say, we're experiential learners. So let them have the experience, even if you're seeing that there's a better way, or gosh, I wish I could guide this process right now. But maybe if we just let them walk that path and figure things out, gosh, that becomes a lesson learned for life rather than being told over and over what to do. It just doesn't land the same. So I really appreciate that angle too. Yeah, of just you're not teaching, and you don't need to teach them everything.
No, I think the most important thing is teaching them that they're able to connect the dots for themselves. And when we micromanage, we're connecting the dots. And right now, the teen brain is primed to learn how to find those connections and to build those connections. And when we build them for them, they're not building them. So they're not creating them. And when so I like to point out, here's dot A and here's dot B. You know, you've got homework to do and you've got soccer practice later, and you got to, how are you going to fit all that together? And I'm not going to tell them how. Now, they may get from point A to point B going all over the freaking place. It may be like all over, and you're like, what is there? It's so disorganized. There's no time management. But they eventually get there. And the next time they do it, they might get there it might take a little, the path becomes a little bit shorter. And then the next time it becomes a little bit shorter. And you know what you're doing? You're helping them actually learn how to connect those dots more effectively. If you tell them how, and they don't build those connections themselves, that connection is not built. And then they go off to adulthood and they don't have, and we see this in the workforce. Kids don't know how to think critically. They're afraid to make decisions on their own because they weren't taught how.
Yeah, because there was somebody in there quickly fixing the problem, giving a better way, telling them what to do. Everything becomes so sort of instructionally based. And I remember when I was in my undergrad, one of my professors shared this story about sort of this process over product approach. And she was really, it always stuck with me, and I share it a lot, but she talks about this. I want to say it might be a fable or a story that is used maybe in like in Asian cultures, but she said that there was this mom who asks her son to set the table for 5. And she notices he goes and grabs one dish and walks to the table and puts the one dish down and goes back and gets the second dish and she's about to step in and say, oh, you could just grab 5 plates and you could go and walk them to the table and disperse them and then grab all your utensils, right? She was ready to jump in and sort of offer this more efficient approach. And she stopped herself. And right, this is our intuitive part of us, I always say. And she stopped herself and she thought, well, what would happen if I just let him have this process? So the first day, it takes him a long time and he does it one by one. The second day, same thing. And the third day, she said he starts to walk over with the one plate and he stops. He looks at the plate, looks back at the cabinet, looks at the dining room table, and he walks over and he stacks all the plates and he starts to grab all. And then he gets a tray for all the other things. So he's not, and she didn't have to say a word. And to your point, that wired something in his brain in that moment that had she just told him that first day, what are you doing? Just grab all the plates and take them. He would have missed that. And now he would have he grows up constantly needing somebody to provide him that information because it's not embedded.
And not only is it not embedded, they're afraid to make a mistake.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, exactly. So, oh my goodness, Dr. Cam, I could talk to you all day. So, just to be able to give people, the path to you. And I want to make sure people find you because I know you're helping so many people. Tell us a little bit more about where people can find you and some of the things that you do in terms of your work with parents.
Sure. So I've got my podcast too, Parenting Teens with Dr. Cam. And that comes out weekly. I'm on Instagram every single day at Dr. Cam Caswell. So I do lots of tips there. And then you can just go to my website, askdrcam.com, and that's DRCAM. You can find all the programs I have for parents.
Amazing. Well, we're going to put all of those links in the show notes, everyone, so you guys can easily go and find Dr. Cam, send her your questions. Dr. Cam, you have reframed so many things for me today. Thank you so much for being here. This has been quite an exciting conversation to have. I know listeners are going to really, really enjoy this.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me today. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever it is that you're listening right now. And what really makes my day is if you share or recommend the podcast to a friend. It is the greatest compliment. If you have not already, head on over to theparentingreframe.com where you can subscribe to get my weekly newsletter, Parenting Skimmed. 10 sentences delivered to your inbox every Thursday to help you parent and live a better life. It's for the parent who constantly told me, I just don't have time to read. Make sure to come and say hi to me on Instagram at @theparentingreframe. My DMs are always open and I love hearing from you. Until next time, this is Albiona.